As the world marks the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, new security challenges have emerged.
全国各族人民传承和弘扬伟大抗战精神，中华民族伟大复兴势不可挡。
Tensions around Taiwan continue to increase.
It's public that Xi has ordered his military to be capable of invading Taiwan by 2027. The PLA is building the military needed to do it, training for it every day, and rehearsing for the real deal.
As fears grow, Taiwanese people rehearse for an invasion.
台湾当然是一个国家啊。
台湾从来不是一个国家，过去不是，今后更绝无可能。
Meanwhile, Japan is rearming. Military spending is at an all-time high since the end of World War II.
Of course, Japanese people want peace, but way towards peace is not just pacifism. Sometimes you can ensure peace by deterrence, and for deterrence, you need strength.
Japan deepens its military partnership with the United States. But public opinion is split. As security concerns grow more complex in Asia, some countries expand their nuclear arsenal.
I am deeply concerned at this time. Now, big powers are now talking about the use of nuclear weapons.
What are the different Asian perspectives on how to maintain the peace? In 1937, the Japanese army marched into Beijing. A full-scale war follows. The Chinese are massacred, the government humiliated, and entire cities destroyed. Scars remain long after Japan's surrender in 1945. Sino-Japanese tensions continue to be viewed by many in China through the prism of World War II. Emerging from the century of humiliation that was capped by World War II, China's leaders have vowed never to be weak again.
全国各族人民传承和弘扬伟大抗战精神，中华民族伟大复兴势不可挡。今天，人类又面临和平还是战争？中国人民坚持走和平发展道路。
Since he took power in 2012, President Xi has ordered the People's Liberation Army, or PLA, to modernize at speed, and the call has been answered. The PLA is now the biggest army in the world, with over 2 million soldiers. China has also developed a formidable shipbuilding industry, producing a naval fleet with over 230 warships. That's more than what the United States Navy possesses. China also builds more advanced fighter aircrafts every year than the United States.
China's military modernization is quite unprecedented. It's certainly the fastest, most ambitious modernization in peacetime that we've seen in modern history. And so, what's worrying is not just the sheer scale, but it's also the advanced capabilities that we see coming out of China. So if you look at, hypersonic missiles, if you look at the capability of China's most modern fighter jets, a lot of these are peer to the United States, or even in some areas, they're even ahead of the United States.
Why you need so many weapons, missiles, and hundreds of nuclear weapons, and for what?
China has been projecting its military might more frequently and further. In February 2025, the PLA conducted live-fire naval drills in the international waters off Australia and New Zealand. Australia contends that Beijing did not give sufficient notice about the drills in the Tasman Sea. Commercial flights were canceled, while ordinary Australians demanded answers, causing diplomatic unease. New Zealand's defense minister said the Chinese exercises in those waters were unprecedented. In June 2025, the Japanese Defense Ministry reported that China deployed 2 aircraft carriers simultaneously to the Pacific, near Japan's southern islands. During their exercise, the Chinese fighter jets reportedly made about 520 landings and takeoffs.
The Japanese government decided to release all of this. And I think they did this because it's now becoming increasingly important that the Japanese people around the world understand what China is doing. This clearly shows that China is willing to show its naval capacities beyond not just its first island chains, but second island chain, which is traditionally an area where the US Navy has dominated.
From a Taiwan perspective, now it has to factor in that the attack might not just come from the west, but the attack could also come from the east.
China's increasing confrontation with the Philippines in the South China Sea has also been widely reported.
China seeks to become a hegemonic power in Asia, no doubt. It hopes to dominate and control too many parts of this vibrant and vital region. Through its massive military buildup and growing willingness to use military force to achieve its goals, including gray zone tactics and hybrid warfare, China has demonstrated that it wants to fundamentally alter the region's status quo. We cannot look away, and we cannot ignore it. China's behavior toward its neighbors and the world is a wake-up call, and an urgent one.
我们奉劝美国及其盟国停止在涉海问题上污蔑抹黑、颠倒黑白、倒打一耙。
Why is China conducting live fire drills in new areas like the Tasman Sea near Australia and New Zealand, as well as new exercises like the one reported off Japan in the Pacific in June?
Well, I think that this is inevitable in that as the PLA grows stronger, it will definitely appear more often in the international water. Even the Australian Prime Minister has talked about how China's exercise were legitimate because it is in the open sea. The only thing some Australian officials have mentioned was that the notice from Chinese broadcast from the ship was a bit too short, since Japan is our close neighbor. So, and we actually need to sail through some Japanese straits to get into the Pacific Ocean. But in terms of live firing, that was the first time near Australia, but still, that is international water. Because you see, as the Chinese Navy becomes stronger, it will have to, test the uncharted water.
You just published a book this year. It's called Should the World Fear China? Should it?
Short answer is no. I believe this question best epitomizes the Western's attitude towards China. That's kind of uncertainty, plus a kind of fear. Uncertainty about how strong you will become and where you are going. And the fear in that this kind of Western attitude towards China is really something mixed. On one hand, they could not, live without China because of the economic integration, so on and so forth. On the other hand, they understand that the world is no longer Western.
There are some people in the world who fear China because of China's rapid military buildup. What would be your message to those people?
That after 1979, the Chinese military, in spite of its rapid rise, in spite of its big population, hasn't even killed a single foreigner overseas. Isn't that miraculous? How many wars did the United States fight? You cannot give me an example of the Chinese PLA firing a bullet at anyone.
Every year, American and Japanese troops get together for joint drills known as Exercise Iron Fist. The drills in 2025 are reported by the Japanese media to have the largest troop contingent since the exercise began in 2005. It was held in Kyushu and Okinawa. Okinawa is part of an island chain known as the Nansei Shoto chain, which stretches 1,200 kilometers between Japan's mainland southern point, Kyushu, and Taiwan. This chain is regarded as a potential front line in the event of a Taiwan contingency.
If you look at the map of Japan, the Nansei Shoto located in the southwest, literally, and that geographically very close to Taiwan, East China Sea, and also to the South China Sea. If the Taiwan contingency happens, as the late Prime Minister Abe once mentioned, the Taiwan contingency is the contingency of Japan.
Trouble has been brewing in the Nansei island chain. In August 2022, China fired 5 ballistic missiles into waters around Yonaguni to protest U.S. Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. The nearest missile exploded 80 kilometers off Yonaguni's coast. In February 2025, China flew a reconnaissance and attack drone near the Nansei Islands, prompting scrambles by the Japanese Air Self-Defense Force.
This is the first meeting between Mr.
In the same month, after U.S. and Japanese leaders held their first summit, the two sides pledged to increase military presence in the Nansei Islands. Japan is ramping up its defense spending at a record pace since the end of World War II. In 2022, Tokyo pledged 43 trillion yen, that's about 300 billion US dollars, to a military buildup that would span 5 years. It lifts defense spending to 2% of GDP from just over 1%. Since then, military presence has accelerated rapidly across the Nansei island chain. Yonaguni Island is a case in point. The place is known for its wild horses and rugged coastline. But the wooded mountain ranges now carry radar sites to monitor Chinese military activity. And what was once a cattle ranch is now a military camp. These developments have divided opinions in the community.
国境の島ってことは誇りに思ってきたんです。ところがここ最近国境の島だから危ない危ないって煽られて、すごく悲しいんですけど。
もうそのなんかスピードが速いんですよ。もうこのなんかこの変わっていくその受け入れここまではいいよって言ってたのがそれを飛び越えてどんどんいろいろなこの施設ができたりもう状況が変わっていく台湾有事で。
Residents must contend with more than just the presence of local troops. The U.S. Army also conducts exercises at Camp Yonaguni. Plans are also underway for a new missile site and expansions to the island's small airport and port. Some locals fear the military buildup might provoke an attack.
こんな素晴らしい島をそういう利用の仕方、バトルフィールドにするっていう感覚で見ないでほしい。
The fishermen, who have been among the first to see growing Chinese military activity, take a different view.
日本の自衛隊だけでは守れないっていうのはもうお分かりだと思うんです。だからそこのことを考えると米軍が一緒になって合同演習を行う。
This division in public opinion can be found across the Nansei island chains. In Okinawa, some residents are calling for the number of American troops located on the island to be reduced. 55,000 American troops are stationed in Japan, and most of them are here in Okinawa.
The most fundamental difference that needs to be addressed is, I would say, philosophical, in that there are those in Okinawa who truly believes that any type of preparation for a crisis, any type of military buildup to deter such activities from occurring is escalatory in nature. So for them, the best option is to not do anything, because any action would be seen provocative from the other side, so we should not do that. But then, of course, there are others in Okinawa who believes that, no, deterrence works. We need to pursue peace through strengths. We need to be prepared.
Is this fundamental philosophical differences also amplified throughout the whole nation?
I would say so, and there are various public opinions to support this. I think that the Japanese people are becoming much more aware about the importance of the self-defense forces and the Japan-US alliance in deterring conflict from occurring in the region, precisely because what's happening in the Taiwan Straits, as well as what's going on in the Russia-Ukraine front. I think we all thought that we are now living in a world where we decided collectively that we are not going to use military force to change the status quo. Apparently, that's not the case anymore with the Russians engaging in an illegal invasion against Ukraine. If that's happening, then how are we to be sure that that doesn't happen again elsewhere in the world?
In the 2025 Japan Defense Ministry White Paper, published in July, it states China poses an unprecedented and the greatest strategic challenge to Japan's security.
Now, since the normalization of China-Japan bilateral relations, trade has just gone up. It's gone up more than 300 times, and the figure now is close to $300 billion annually. We know that Japan is China's third largest foreign investor, and China is Japan's largest trading partner. So in the context of all that, is China really a threat to Japan?
Well, China has been the engine of the world economy for past decades, and that is also true for Japan. And currently, that 12,000 Japanese companies are operating in China, and many of them are making a good profit. But at the same time, we are also engaged in the large-scale strategic competition of the United States and China, and we are the largest ally in Asia of the United States. So how we can really create the more resilient economic structure. After all, Chinese economy still plays a huge role in the Japanese economy in both positive way and also as a source of risk. So we are now navigating such a complex scenario towards China.
The likelihood of a conflict between China and Japan, I believe, is when Japan start to provide logistic support to the United States, because that is a kind of a treaty obligation for them. But they are not stupid, because according to public opinion, not many people would support a direct conflict with China. I don't believe the Japanese would assist the United States military unless it is attacked by China first, for example, with missiles. But why would China all of a sudden decide to launch a missile attack on Japanese territory?
What's the thinking on whether or not Japan should defend Taiwan if it ever were to come to that?
there are no treaty obligations for Japan to protect Taiwan. That's clear. What is important for Japan, though, is that the Taiwan contingency does not happen. So it's less about Japan trying to defend Taiwan, but more about Japan doing everything it can with its allies and partners to make sure that such a crisis is deterred.
Japan and the United States have a long-standing military partnership. After the U.S. dropped nuclear bombs on Japan, the Americans oversaw the drafting of a constitution in which Japan forever renounces war. The United States promised to defend Japan if it came under attack, but this event has raised questions.
You haven't been allowed. We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion. We gave you military equipment, and your men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about West?
If you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days.
How do you think the spat between Zelensky and Trump impacted Japan's thinking on its defense?
I think that it's huge. We have been living, in the world where United States provides the basic rules, norms, and the commitments for the peace and security. And that really provided the platform of Japan's way of living. But if United States pursue much more transactional sense of dealing with the allies, the assumption that we have shared interests, shared goals, and shared responsibilities so that we are able to fight with each other. And such kind of scenarios are now become quite fragile between two sides. And what if that the United States declare that they are no longer interested in defending Senkaku Islands or even the Taiwan Straits? What would be the reason for Japan to commit ourselves to the defense cooperation with the United States, where the United States is no longer interested in defending allies with their principles? So this is the fundamental question that we have. And I think that the answer is very limited. But at least that what we can pursue is to develop our own capability.
At the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, the U.S. sought to reassure its partners.
We will stand with you and work alongside you to deter Chinese aggression. Each day, together, no one should doubt America's commitment to our Indo-Pacific allies and partners.
For some, the U.S.-Japan military deal is to be celebrated. Others are not so sure. June 23rd, a solemn remembrance ceremony is held. One of many such events this year, as Japan marks 80 years since the end of World War II. As its citizens reflect on the past, there are no easy answers on how it can maintain peace in the future.
決して繰り返さない。進む道を二度と間違えない。あの戦争の反省と教訓を今改めて深く胸に刻まねばなりません。
A missile explodes. A building collapses. Taiwanese soldiers respond. They're part of a rehearsal, and Taiwan has been stepping them up lately.
也因为因应地缘政治的变化，所以我们政府不能不做因应。所以在总统府，我日前有宣布，我即将亲自主持全社会防卫韧性委员会。
In March 2025, the newly created Defense Resilience Committee organized its first civil defense drills, rehearsing for emergencies like an attack by China. Earlier in the same month, President William Lai had labeled China a foreign hostile force and warned of expanding subversion and spying by Beijing. China's response was swift. The PLA's Army, Navy, air and rocket forces closed in on the Taiwan island from multiple directions during the drills. Among the goals of the exercise, according to the PLA, was controlling energy lanes, cutting off supply routes, and blocking escape paths by drilling precision strikes on simulated targets such as ports and energy facilities.
Now, we've seen PLA exercises around Taiwan for several years now.
Right.
But what makes the exercise in April different from the previous ones?
It's the first time that the PLA showing is doing simulated precision strikes on Taiwan's infrastructure. So they show the clips of simulated attacks on passageways or major ports and so forth.
In the April exercise, they also practiced a blockade.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about the significance of a blockade?
Invasion is costly. Blockade, on the other hand, seemed to be more viable option for the Chinese because Taiwan consists of a series of islands. So that makes Taiwan very vulnerable to this kind of tactic. And also, if a blockade occurs, then Taiwan will only have 6 to 10 months of supply without the imports.
Yeah, Taiwan is heavily dependent on imports. It imports over 97% of its energy and over 70% of its food. So a blockade will really squeeze Taiwan, right?
Right. For the Chinese, it seems more effective strategy because, as I said, the ultimate goal is to make sure that through the least cost possible to induce Taiwanese societies chaos, divisions and distrust with the authorities, and then they may, end up surrender.
China's drills around Taiwan have been increasing in scale and frequency for several years now.
Our Minister of Defense, they had a number of every day that China fighter or Navy ship enter the median line or enter ADIZ or our EEZ.
It's basically dulling our senses and Taiwan's senses so that we might say, okay, this is just a typical exercise that we always see, but it's actually the opening salvo of an invasion. And we don't have time to prepare.
The Taiwanese are getting increasingly concerned. In July 2025, yet another drill simulating an invasion was carried out. 22,000 reservists were mobilized, more than ever before in the exercise's 41-year history. The Taiwan contingency is viewed by many as the largest flashpoint in the world, as it could draw the world's two major nuclear superpowers into war.
It's public that Xi has ordered his military to be capable of invading Taiwan by 2027. The PLA is building the military needed to do it, training for it every day, and rehearsing for the real deal. But if deterrence fails, and if called upon by my commander-in-chief, we are prepared to do what the Department of Defense does best, to fight and win decisively.
The US does not recognize Taiwan as a country, and Taiwan is very far away from the United States geographically. So why would the US potentially take on an adversary like China over Taiwan?
So the first thing is that you have to look at Taiwan and where it is geographically. It sits at the heart of the first island chain, which stretches from Japan down through Taiwan and into the Philippines. You know, with the whole first island chain essentially being US allies or close US partners in the case of Taiwan, you know, China does find it incredibly difficult to project power outside of the first island chain, and the United States has an ability to also hem in Chinese power. If you had Taiwan under China's control, China could pose a far more direct threat to Japan, not only the Southwest Islands and the Senkakus, but Okinawa as well. And of course, the United States is committed to Japan's defense by treaty. And China could also have much more control over critical sea lanes coming through the South China Sea and really be able to also dictate the terms of commerce and access to Asia. So one thing is geography, which of course you cannot change. It is what it is, and Taiwan is in a very important location. The second thing is economically. We all know that Taiwan produces over 90% of the world's most advanced chips. And when you're thinking about the most advanced chips, the NVIDIA chips of the world, you know, that is what's going to power the AI revolution. And so there is a question of continued US access to chips as well, and what would happen if the United States lost access to that, or if China potentially controlled that.
So what do you think will be the best way to maintain the peace over Taiwan?
To me, I think hard deterrence is a major part of the equation. It is for the United States to continue to move the assets that we would need for a potential Taiwan contingency to the Indo-Pacific. It's to do a lot more with our allies, above all Japan, but also South Korea, the Philippines, Australia, and others, to demonstrate to the Chinese that it's not just a US-China fight.
Beyond the hard deterrence and the partnership, what about the role of diplomacy? What about the One China policy and maintaining the status quo?
Yeah, that is a component, and I just don't see any danger that the United States would go forward and recognize Taiwan as an independent country. You know, the US One China policy is consistent. It has been consistent through administrations. The United States does not support Taiwan independence.
台湾是否为一个国家？根据国家主权4个要素，台澎金马，这是土地；定期改选各级政府执行公权力，这是政府，这是治权，并对外进行外交，拥有国防力量，这是主权。由这块土地上的2300万人民所组成的政治共同体，是不是一个国家？是国家的人举手一下来。谢谢你们，我们掌声为台湾喝彩。台湾当然是一个国家啊。
台湾从来不是一个国家，过去不是，今后更绝无可能。鼓吹台独就是分裂国家，支持台独就是干涉中国内政，纵容台独就是破坏台海稳定。
The former Joe Biden administration reportedly sold arms worth around $8.4 billion to Taiwan. American media reports that the United States plans to ramp up weapons sales to Taipei even more as part of an effort to deter China.
No matter how many weapons they want to sell to Taiwan, they're just useless, because the growth of strength of mainland China is simply overwhelming. So therefore, it's difficult for me to dissuade him from not selling arms because Trump is a businessman. Selling arms to Taiwan would make a lot of money. And of course, there are American industrial military complex. These people definitely want to sell whatever they have, right? Having said that, I believe Donald Trump is still in a good position to do something different. Why is that? Because unlike his first term, he actually has more authority, and his lieutenants would listen to him, right? So therefore, in a way, his position is much stronger than Joe Biden, who wasn't determined to dissuade Nancy Pelosi from visiting Taiwan, although he himself might not be happy with it. So I think Donald Trump actually is in a position to do a lot of things.
Now, President William Lai said in a recent speech that Taiwan is a country, and at the same time, we've seen an increase in weapon sales from the US to Taiwan. In the context of all that, where do you see cross-strait relations headed?
We are in the midst of a lot of uncertainties, and the uncertainties do stem from these three sides. Right now, Taiwan is in the middle of internal political struggle. There's definitely partisan divide, and there's a lot of things inside China, happening inside China. And Xi Jinping and the CCP, they're facing a lot of challenges. U.S. is another layer of complexity because Trump is unpredictable, to say the least. These three sides or three actors, they each have their internal challenges to face, and that will affect how they interact with each other. We are living in an environment of a lot of uncertainties. Maybe one minor behavior from either side can be interpreted as a sign of provocation, and that adding up could, may lead to more tensions.
In April 2025, thousands of protesters took to the streets in Taiwan as part of an opposition rally against Taiwanese leader William Lai.
我跟中共的习近平先生2次会商，维持了两岸8年的和平、安定与繁荣。为什么换了民进党执政，台湾的年轻人担心就会在延长兵役制度的阴影下走上战场？
What do you think must be done to maintain the peace?
First one is maintain status quo, not give the reason or excuse to China to invade Taiwan. The first one. The second one is increase our defense capability to make some deterrent effect to China. The last one is international support. Taiwan is very important in geostrategic value, in global economy and technology, and even the paradigm and value of democracy. So international society, international will support Taiwan, but we need to keep our power, and then international will support Taiwan.
I have always argued the final solution for me is very simple. You should let Beijing believe that peaceful reunification is still possible. Yeah, if Beijing believes peaceful reunification is still possible, Beijing would have patience. On the other hand, if people like Lai Ching-te, behaves, recklessly, irresponsibly like this, so wouldn't that make Chinese government becoming more impatient? And that is the most dangerous moment, because according to our anti-secession law, the last condition is that if Chinese government believes that all the possibilities for peaceful reunifications are gone, therefore we have to use force.
Because China every day saying your fighter and navy should surround Taiwan, threat Taiwan. Who want to unification to this region, right?
That's the atomic bomb exploding at Nagasaki. The film was taken in a B-29 many miles away. All of you who see this picture can judge for yourselves the extent of the menace to civilization of this new weapon. Civilized people can only demand that such power be directed not towards their obliteration, but to the benefit of mankind.
After World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union embarked on a nuclear arms race, sparking widespread protests. An international treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons was signed in 1968 by 191 states. Signatories included the 5 countries with nuclear arsenals: China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Today, global leaders warn that the pledges that have been made are at risk of being rescinded.
We are living in the 21st century. I am deeply concerned at this time. Now, big powers are now talking about the use of nuclear weapons, particularly when Russia has illegally invaded Ukraine. And they are now, while this war has been dragging 3 years almost, then they are now saying that the possibility of using nuclear weapons. India, Pakistan, even though they are not fully officially recognized as nuclear power stations, nuclear weapon stations, but there's a possibility that either India or Pakistan, if they one side use nuclear weapons, this will really totally destroy the international security system. Therefore, many people will ask, what's the use of having this agreement when these agreements are not kept sincerely?
Russian President Vladimir Putin has sent a strong warning to the West about a potential for nuclear conflict if NATO sends its troops to Ukraine.
In November 2024, North Korea media released videos of this intercontinental ballistic missile test. In May 2025, North Korea fired more ICBMs in an exercise and stressed that their nuclear forces are ready to fight. Over in South Korea, public support for a nuclear program in response to developments in the North is growing. Over in China, for years it maintained a minimal nuclear arsenal with only about 20 ICBMs, while Russia and the US had thousands of nuclear warheads. This is now rapidly changing. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, China's nuclear program is growing faster than any other country. Since 2023, its arsenal has expanded by 100 new nukes per year, reaching 600 in 2025, making it the world's 3rd largest stockpile. In June 2025, the UK government announced plans to buy at least 12 new fighter jets that can carry nuclear bombs. In August 2025, President Trump ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be moved to what he called the appropriate regions. Right now, there are more than 12,200 nuclear weapons, of which about 2,000 are ready to be launched, potentially wiping out cities and countries.
We have to keep in mind as well when we're talking about modern nuclear weapons, they are far more powerful than the atomic bombs that the United States dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So when we're thinking about a potential employment by Russia of a nuclear weapon or China or the United States, we're talking about far more destruction than we saw at the end of World War II.
China is developing a strategic arsenal. If the US Department of Defense assessment is right, they are looking at the parity status with the United States and Russia. And by 2035, probably we are going to see the 3 big nuclear weapon states are creating the strategic triangle with each other. So in that context, what kind of position that Japan needs to play?
The United States has never talked about using nuclear weapons against Russia. First. This is the last thing they want to talk about. So why would they sometimes? Why would some people and some organizations like Atlantic Council talk about using nuclear weapons against China? That is because they believe China's nuclear arsenal is small. China should increase it to the extent that the United States would never, ever dare to think about using nuclear weapons against the Chinese in any conflict. And that is my conclusion.
December 2024, a ceremony is held to honor the recipients of the year's Nobel Peace Prize. It goes to Nihon Hidankyo, an organization that campaigns against nuclear weapons. Most of its members are survivors of the atomic bomb.
The nuclear powers are modernizing and upgrading their arsenals. New countries appear to be preparing to acquire nuclear weapons, and threats are being made to use nuclear weapons as part of ongoing warfare. Today's nuclear weapons have far greater destructive power. They can kill millions and would impact the climate catastrophically. A nuclear war could destroy our civilization.
本当の意味のね、核兵器を使うぞ、脅しをしてますよね。で、それは本当の核兵器の怖さを知らないからではないでしょうか。
これまでやってきたことをより一層、取り組んでいかなくちゃいけないなというふうに思いました。
The people gathered here have one message they hope leaders will hear.